Have you ever heard footsteps behind you, then turned around and realized nobody was there? Or felt something watching you from the darkness of your own house even though you knew you were completely alone? The people in these videos experienced exactly that. These are the most chilling incidents ever caught on camera. Number 1. The voice outside her door. On March 8th, 2025, a woman named Emma was home alone late at night watching television when she suddenly heard strange noises coming from her front door. At first, it sounded like faint whispering mixed with scratching noises near the entrance. Confused and unsettled, Emma grabbed her phone and began recording. Then things became terrifying. A distorted voice outside the door quietly spoke words that sounded disturbingly similar to Emma's own voice. Seconds later, the doorknob slowly began rattling as if someone was trying to get inside. Emma nervously checked the nearby windows, expecting to see a person standing outside, but there was absolutely nobody there. 6 days later, it happened again. This time the voice became far more aggressive, repeatedly whispering, "Let me in," while the handle violently moved back and forth. Terrified, Emma refused to open the door and continued filming while repeatedly showing the empty porch outside her windows. Emma later admitted she believed whatever was outside wasn't human at all, describing it as something imitating her voice to trick her into opening the door. Even after uploading the footage online, the unexplained knocking and whispering reportedly continued every few nights afterward. Hearing something outside your house is terrifying enough, but at least you can lock the door and convince yourself it's staying outside. The next incident makes that impossible. Number 2. The moving dolls. Inside a small shop known for selling creepy antique dolls, security cameras repeatedly captured disturbing paranormal activity late at night after the building closed. When the owner watched the surveillance footage, several hanging dolls suddenly began spinning on their own, despite there being no visible wind or movement inside the store. Another camera later recorded a doll falling over by itself and sliding out of the room without any person being present. But the most terrifying footage came one night when the cameras suddenly started glitching for no apparent reason. As the image distorted, something horrifying slowly appeared between the dolls in the darkness. A strange, human-like head seemed to rise up from behind the dolls before the camera completely malfunctioned again. When the footage returned to normal seconds later, the figure had vanished entirely. The store owner later admitted that strange activity had been happening for years, but this was the first time cameras appeared to capture something physically manifesting inside the shop itself. Whatever appeared in that shop only showed itself for a few seconds. The next man spent days listening to something he couldn't see, and it seemed to know exactly when he was coming. Number 3. The basement knocking. For several days, a man named Smith kept hearing deliberate knocking coming from behind the basement door inside his house. At first, he ignored it and blamed the sounds on an old house settling, but the noises became so frequent and unnatural that he finally grabbed a camera and decided to investigate. Standing outside the basement entrance, he quietly explained that the knocking had continued all morning long. Then he slowly opened the door. The moment the basement became visible, every sound instantly stopped. The silence felt wrong. Smith cautiously walked downstairs while recording every corner of the room, but there was absolutely nothing there. No animals, no broken pipes, no explanation for the repeated knocking. Yet viewers pointed out something especially disturbing about the footage. The noises always stopped the exact second he opened the door, almost like whatever was making them knew he was coming. Smith later admitted that the basement never felt normal again afterward, because he couldn't shake the feeling that something had been waiting down there listening to him from the other side of the door. Most people would rather not know what's making noises inside their house, but curiosity has a way of winning, and for one Airbnb guest, opening the wrong door turned a strange feeling into something much worse. Number 4. The locked room under the stairs. A TikTok user named Sid Lane rented an Airbnb for what was supposed to be a quiet getaway, but almost immediately, her dog began acting in a way she couldn't explain. Every single time the dog approached the staircase leading upstairs, it would suddenly freeze in place. The behavior became so consistent that Sid eventually started filming it. Then one night, after returning to the Airbnb, things escalated. As Sid walked past a nearby bedroom, she noticed a bead curtain gently swaying by itself like someone had just walked through it moments earlier.
Jesus Christ.
Seconds later, footsteps could allegedly be heard slowly climbing the stairs behind her dog, despite nobody else being inside the house. A moment later, you can see something pulling the dog's leash upwards. Terrified but desperate for answers, Sid linked her dog's reaction to the locked room beneath the staircase. She eventually slid her phone underneath the locked basement door, hoping to capture what was hidden on the other side. At first, the room appeared completely empty. When she pulled her phone back, suddenly the doorknob started rattling by itself while her hand was nowhere near it. She screams and runs away. During another attempt, her phone was abruptly pulled farther beneath the door. You can clearly see the phone moving until it eventually stops. You might think the item just fell down the stairs and that's why it's moving. But when you see what happens next, I think it's safe to say that whatever is down the basement wants to keep an eye on her because it moves the phone towards the door. The next day, the homeowner finally unlocked the room for her, revealing deep scratch marks carved into the inside of the basement door. What made viewers especially uneasy was the realization that whatever left those marks may have been trapped inside that room, trying to get out. Some people encounter strange activity inside a building. Others discover that the safest place might actually be indoors. Number 5. Voices in the Appalachian Woods. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a family living near old coal mines captured footage so creepy that many viewers refused to finish watching it alone. One afternoon, their son suddenly ran upstairs in complete panic, claiming he heard his sister screaming for help outside the house.
I heard a help or something.
On the back porch.
Going back there.
Okay, hold on.
Seconds later, he also heard his father's voice calling from the porch, despite his father not being home at the time. The mother immediately locked herself upstairs with the children and began recording while their dogs became increasingly distressed. Then the sounds outside changed. Whistling echoed around the house, followed by faint laughing and footsteps circling the property. At one point, a whisper quietly saying, "Help," could allegedly be heard somewhere outside the walls. The family became even more terrified when one of the bedroom doors suddenly began shaking violently, as if something was trying to force its way inside. The mother later explained that strange things had happened around the property before, but never this aggressively, and never during daylight hours. Even worse, she claimed the security cameras surrounding the home mysteriously failed every time activity like this occurred. When her husband finally arrived home minutes later, he confirmed there was nobody outside at all. No footprints, no people, no signs that anyone had ever been there. What truly disturbed viewers was the possibility that whatever was outside may have been imitating the voices of family members to lure someone outdoors. Hearing voices outside your home is disturbing. Hearing them inside the same building where someone died is something else entirely. Number 6. The apartment above. A man named Diaz began experiencing deeply disturbing events shortly after discovering that one of his neighbors had died alone inside their apartment without anyone realizing it for days. It started when Diaz noticed swarms of flies and an unbearable smell coming from the neighboring unit before eventually contacting authorities. Police later confirmed that the tenant had passed away inside the apartment and had remained there unnoticed for quite some time. But according to Diaz, things inside the building changed afterward. Shadows reportedly began appearing inside his own apartment. Objects moved on their own, and no matter how much he cleaned, maggots mysteriously kept returning. Even worse, the supposedly empty apartment next door no longer looked abandoned at night. Diaz repeatedly claimed he saw someone wearing a white dress moving around inside the darkened rooms, despite the apartment being vacant. Then, the screaming started. Late at night or during the day, horrifying screams echoed through the building from the apartment directly above the dead neighbor's unit. Diaz eventually confronted the tenant upstairs, thinking he needed help, but the man angrily told him to leave.
Vecino, you okay? No! No! No!
As the weeks passed, the activity only became more intense. Diaz admitted the fear inside the building became unbearable because everything felt connected somehow. The dead neighbor, the shadows, the screaming, and the figure moving around the supposedly empty apartment. Eventually, Diaz decided to move away completely because he became convinced whatever was happening there was not random at all. Not every encounter begins with noises or strange events. Sometimes the evidence is already there, hidden in plain sight until somebody notices it. Let's find out the story of Lindsay Burke. Number 7. The Shadow in the Doorway. A woman named Lindsay Burke was filming an ordinary vlog inside her home when viewers noticed something horrifying hidden in the background behind her. While she casually talked to the camera, a dark figure slowly appeared from the doorway of another room before instantly pulling itself back out of sight the second it became visible. Lindsay insisted nobody else was inside the house at the time. After thousands of people pointed the figure out in the comments, she uploaded another video showing the exact room where it appeared. The room itself looked unsettling enough already, with a dark attic entrance nearby and an old decorative spirit board sitting inside the space. But the situation became even more disturbing later that night, when Lindsay suddenly heard her husband's gaming computer turning on by itself while she was completely home alone. She rushed upstairs expecting to find the computer running, but after unplugging it entirely, the strange sound continued somewhere inside the room. Moments later, she realized the noise wasn't coming from the computer at all. A microphone had somehow activated itself in the darkness. Viewers became convinced that whatever briefly appeared in the doorway may have still been inside the house watching her the entire time. By now you've probably noticed a pattern. People keep seeing things they weren't supposed to see. The next man, though, had no idea how close he came to whatever was watching him. Number 8. The Shadow by the Truck. A man who had been documenting disturbing paranormal activity inside his home eventually became convinced that whatever was haunting the house may have followed him back from outside one night. Strange footsteps echoed through empty rooms, doors repeatedly opened by themselves, and even his cat constantly stared into dark corners, as if watching something invisible move around the house. But the most terrifying incident happened when the man was doing some maintenance work in his garage. After sweeping the floor, he lit up his cigarette and stepped towards his driveway. You can clearly see him looking around his neighborhood, but the danger was behind him. Stepping further onto his driveway, all of a sudden, a few plastic bottles in the garage dropped to the floor without anyone pulling them off the shelf. The man turned around looking confused at the shelf, thinking about what just happened. He never felt safe in his home again, and he's not the only one. Most of us would ignore strange sounds coming from an attic. The man in our next creepy story made the mistake of investigating. Number 9. The Thing in the Attic. A man named Ryan, who lived near the Appalachian forests, started hearing disturbing noises coming from the attic above his shed late at night. At first, he assumed it was probably an animal moving around inside the walls, but the sounds became too violent and unnatural to ignore. He eventually placed cameras around the property, hoping to figure out what was making the noises. The footage captured objects crashing around inside the attic, followed by horrifying screeching sounds that Ryan later admitted didn't resemble any animal he had ever heard before. Outside cameras also recorded strange growling noises echoing from the woods surrounding the shed. Terrified but desperate for answers, Ryan finally climbed into the attic himself while recording everything on his phone. As he slowly searched through the dark, cramped space filled with old boxes and debris, something suddenly shifted deep in the shadows ahead of him. Ryan froze completely before whispering in panic as the camera briefly captured what appeared to be movement staring back at him from the darkness. He immediately backed away and searched the entire attic afterward, but found absolutely nothing inside. The only thing left behind was the footage itself and the horrifying realization that whatever made those sounds may have been watching him the entire time. Ryan went looking for whatever was making those sounds and never found it. The next woman wasn't even searching for anything when something appeared behind her. Number 10. The creature behind the fence. A woman in Kentucky was outside collecting clothes from a railing near her backyard fence when her home security camera captured something deeply unsettling watching her from the other side. At first, the footage looked completely normal as she gathered the laundry and casually prepared to head back inside. But just before she walked away, a pale face with huge dark eyes slowly peeked out through a broken section of the fence directly behind her. The figure stayed perfectly still for several seconds as if silently observing her movements. The woman never noticed it standing there while she was outside. She only discovered it later while reviewing the footage and immediately showed it to neighbors, hoping someone could explain what she saw. Nobody could identify it. Some viewers claimed it resembled a child hiding behind the fence, while others insisted the eyes and proportions looked completely inhuman. Even after the video spread online, nobody ever figured out what was staring at her from the darkness that day. Seeing something strange outside your home is unsettling. Imagine moving into a new house and feeling like it came with you. Number 11. Moving to the wrong house. Not long after moving into a new house somewhere in Poland, a man named Mike began noticing things that made him feel increasingly uncomfortable inside his new home. At first, it was small things. His cat would suddenly stop what it was doing and stare silently into empty corners for several minutes at a time, as if it could see someone standing there. Then objects around the house reportedly started moving on their own. Doors made noises late at night, unexplained knocking echoed through the rooms, and Mike constantly felt like he was being watched whenever he was alone. One night, while falling asleep watching a movie on his laptop, he suddenly heard loud knocking coming from the balcony window. Terrified, he rushed to check outside, but there was nobody there.
Teraz co chwilę coś mi kurwa w okno puka balkonowe. No nie, kurwa! Pierdolę! O kurwa!
The activity only became more aggressive over time. On another night, Mike woke up to even louder sounds echoing throughout the house, forcing him to grab his phone and investigate in complete darkness while visibly panicking. Desperate for answers, he eventually bought an EMF meter, hoping it would detect something paranormal inside the building. But the device repeatedly showed nothing, even while strange activity continued happening around him.
Dobra, jeszcze sprawdzę, ale nic się nie dzieje teraz.
The most disturbing footage came while Mike was drawing late at night when violent knocking suddenly erupted somewhere nearby again. He searched the house but found absolutely nothing.
Kurwa mać! Nie, kurwa!
After uploading the videos online, Mike admitted he genuinely believed he may have encountered something outside one night that somehow followed him back into the house. Even now, he says he never truly feels alone there anymore. Some sightings last only a few seconds. Others leave entire neighborhoods searching for answers. Let's check it out. Number 12. The creature in the backyard. For years, people living in Kenmore, Canada, whispered about strange sightings happening late at night near their homes, but most neighbors dismissed the stories as exaggerations or internet hoaxes. That changed after a terrifying backyard security video spread online. The footage showed a thin humanoid figure slowly emerging from the darkness behind a house, sometime during the middle of the night. At first, the creature moved low to the ground in an unnatural crouched position before suddenly standing upright and calmly walking across the yard. What terrified viewers most was its appearance. It had a large almond-shaped head, extremely thin limbs, and huge dark eyes that reflected almost no light. The figure moved strangely smoothly, almost like it didn't fully understand how humans walk. Some people insisted the video captured an extraterrestrial creature wandering through the neighborhood, while skeptics argued it was likely someone wearing a costume. But nobody could explain why the figure appeared so comfortable casually moving through somebody's backyard in the middle of the night, as if it belonged there. Most people would rather encounter something in their backyard than inside a building where they're completely alone. That's what happened to the woman in our next story. Number 13. The pale face in the elevator. A woman working an early morning shift inside a large building arrived before everyone else and quickly realized something felt wrong almost immediately. While working alone downstairs, she suddenly heard an agonizing sound echoing from the dark dining area on the upper floor. The noise sounded disturbingly human, almost like somebody crying or suffering somewhere in the darkness above her. Nervous but curious, she pulled out her phone and slowly walked upstairs while recording. As she entered the empty dining room, the strange, lamenting noise continued echoing through the building despite nobody being visible anywhere around her. Terrified, she decided to head straight for the elevator and leave the floor entirely. But just as the elevator doors began closing, loud footsteps suddenly came sprinting toward her from somewhere behind in the darkness. Like something was trying to reach the elevator before it shut. Once inside, she realized something was staring at her. She took a photo of it and looked at it later in more detail, only to discover something horrifying afterward. Reflected faintly in the elevator doors behind her appeared to be a pale, human-like face with huge black eyes and a dark mouth staring directly at her from the darkness. After that incident, she reportedly refused to ever work early shifts alone again. She never found out who or what was following her through that building. The next encounter made a couple police officers scared and second-guessing what they've seen. Let's find out. Number 14. The children inside the school. A police officer named Jesus Vargas was working a late-night patrol shift with his partner in Nayarit, Mexico, when they encountered something neither of them could explain afterward. Just after 3 o'clock in the morning, the officers were driving past a closed elementary school when movement inside the gated property suddenly caught their attention. At first, it looked like two small children running around near the school buildings long after everyone should have gone home. But the closer they looked, the more disturbing the figures became. The children appeared completely shrouded in darkness. Even with police lights flashing directly toward them, no facial features, clothing details, or clear body outlines could be seen at all. They looked more like moving black silhouettes than actual kids. Then, the moment the figures noticed the police car, both children suddenly screamed and sprinted away into the darkness of the school grounds.
Manches, sí, mira lo que estamos viendo nosotros ahorita a las 3 de la mañana.
Jesus and his partner immediately searched the entire perimeter, expecting to find two trespassing kids hiding nearby, but the property was completely empty. The next morning, the officers contacted the school directly, and staff confirmed that nobody had been left inside overnight, and no children had been reported missing anywhere nearby. Disturbed by what they saw, the officers later returned to the school during another patrol, hoping to find some explanation, but nothing unusual appeared again. Sometimes the scariest mysteries aren't the ones caught by investigators or security cameras. They're the ones that begin with a cry for help. Number 15. The little girl at the door. On November 22, 2019, a Ring doorbell camera captured one of the most heartbreaking and disturbing videos ever uploaded online. Late at night, A terrified little girl approached the front door of a house in Texas holding a flashlight while repeatedly glancing behind her as if someone was following her through the neighborhood. She rang the bell and begged for help in a panicked voice, but there was one horrifying problem. Nobody was home. The homeowners were away on vacation, meaning the frightened child was completely alone outside with nobody answering the door. As the seconds passed, she became increasingly desperate while continuing to look over her shoulder into the darkness behind her. By the time the homeowners finally discovered the footage later, the little girl had vanished without a trace. Police investigated the incident, but years later, nobody has ever publicly identified who she was or what she was running from that night. What disturbed viewers most was the fear in her voice because it sounded genuine, like she truly believed something dangerous was close behind her.
Please help!
This encounter only lasted a few minutes. The next family took a Christmas photo and only realized something disturbing years later. Number 16. The figure behind the Christmas tree. On Christmas Eve in 2022, a father sitting alone beside his family's Christmas tree casually took a photo inside their quiet living room without noticing anything unusual at the time. Weeks later, while scrolling through old pictures, his wife suddenly stopped after noticing something horrifying hidden in the image. Standing near the Christmas tree was a tall, dark figure completely motionless in the background. Nobody in the family recognized it. The father insisted he had been entirely alone downstairs that night and had seen nobody standing near the tree when the photo was taken. But the story became even more disturbing when the stepmother admitted she had previously seen the exact same figure months earlier, standing silently behind him before suddenly disappearing.
This was the image that my dad had taken. Prepare yourself for a jump scare, but this is nobody that I know.
She never mentioned it because she couldn't explain what she saw. Once the family realized the figure in the photo matched what she described perfectly, they became convinced something had been inside the house long before the picture was taken. To this day, they still don't know who or what was standing beside the Christmas tree watching them. By this point, you might think you've seen every kind of unexplained encounter imaginable. Then one woman stepped outside her house and found something waiting for her. If these videos creeped you out, the next one on screen gets even worse. Click now, because the things caught in that footage still haven't been explained.